There you go.
All right, should I go ahead and get us started?
Yeah, I'm Jason Johnson. I'm the Director of Marketing and Business Development for St. Elizabeth's Adult Daycare Centers. We have 4 centers here in Missouri, and we're very, very fortunate to have you guys talk tonight and give us a rundown of what it's like, the journey through Down syndrome. So I think your presentation is called just that, a caregiver's journey for adults with Down syndrome, presented by um, Margot Lake, and it's Jadine, right?
Uh-huh.
Yep. Okay. I appreciate it, guys. Ladies, guys, you've got the floor.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So again, my name is Margot Rhondeau. I am the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at NDSS, which is the National Down Syndrome Society. And I'm joined today with Jadine and Lake. I'm really excited to be with you. NDSS empowers individuals with Down syndrome and their families by driving policy change, providing resources, engaging with local communities, and shifting public perceptions. And we do this, we support and advocate for the Down syndrome community by focusing on 3 key areas of programming. So resources and support, advocacy and policy, and community engagement. So just to dive a little deeper into those, for resources and support, we have a 1-800 helpline and an info email that anybody can email us at any point in time and ask us a question about Down syndrome, and we will do our best to answer the question or point you in the direction of people we think could be of use. We also create resources and information starting with prenatal diagnosis all the way up to end of life, and our resources include education, employment, health and wellness, aging, and caregiving. And here are a couple examples. From the advocacy and policy perspective, we advocate on the federal, state, and local levels. We develop and improve laws to positively impact people with Down syndrome across the community and to affirm their human rights. Our legislative agenda really spans, again, the life experience of individuals with Down syndrome, so starting with prenatal diagnosis all the way up until end of life. For community engagement, we do a lot. We really try hard to get into the community. Here are a couple examples. I'll say my favorite is that in September, we do an hour-long video in Times Square where we show pictures of people with Down syndrome, which is really cool. We also do some virtual engagement, some in-person engagement, but really try to get, like I said, get in the community and support the community as much as possible. We have a couple of events coming up listed here that if you guys are interested, we would love to have you join us. Some of them are virtual, some of them are in person, sort of depending on, do you want to go to a gala? You want to come on the Hill and chat with representatives with us, or join us for that video in Times Square? We would love to have you at any of them. So that's just a quick rundown of NDSS and who we are and what our mission is. I want to introduce Jadine. Jadine is, we call her the elder at NDSS, but she is really the one that helps guide us in how we think about caring for caregivers of people with adults, children with Down syndrome. A few years ago, Jadine came to NDSS and said, there is a huge part of our community that is not being thought about and really needs help. And our leader at that point, I wasn't there, said, you're right. And so we've really leaned heavily into the adult space and the caregiver space and realized that there is a large community of people that need support. So I will turn it over to Jadine so she can give us her expert opinion.
My elder opinion. And I use the term elder in the sense of the fact that I believe elders have a lot of wisdom from lived experiences, not because I'm old, even though I am, but I use elder more for that sense then. But you can see from that picture, I'm sure you can tell that from those curtains hanging behind my head that it was taken quite a while ago. I've been a parent and a caregiver for a long time. That little bitty baby that was probably 2 days old in that picture is now over 50 years old. So I've been, had been thinking about what was my role as a caregiver and as a parent. And I noticed that there were some things that repeated throughout Matt's 50 years. And I kind of came up with these 4 things. First, and this is the one that just, I can't let go of it. And I'm going to sneak something in a little bit about this. Caregiving has no retirement plan. It's the same for parents or siblings. Stephanie and is it Jason? Stephanie and Jason, you will probably see a lot of siblings providing care for their brothers and sisters with Down syndrome. It happens a lot. The thing that changes for them is their role has to change. They become more of a parent-like than the fun sister or brother that they were throughout their lives. The second thing was to learn to let go. It's part of our journey. It's important to build a heart network, and it's very important to share the hard stuff because that's how change happens. And as I mentioned earlier, I've been a mama bear for over 50 years. Matt had a lot of challenges even as a child, and I knew intuitively, instinctively, that there was more to him than that diagnosis of Down syndrome that he got when he was 2 days old. He was misunderstood by teachers and his other supports. He had meltdowns and he had refusals frequently, and he was labeled a difficult or bad child. I spent a lot of years providing care that really went above and beyond parenting, filled with lots of love, of course, but it was much more than just parenting. And then one day he grew up and he was an adult. And he was in his mid-20s when my role as a parent and caregiver first started to change. He moved into a home of his own, and he has supports that are funded through a Medicaid waiver. And at that point, I was no longer the person who, took care of making sure he had a bath or helped him pick out his clothes to wear or cooked his favorite meals, gave him goodnight kisses. And I didn't get to sing him his favorite songs when he was upset. I can tell you that when he moved into his own place, I felt relief. But at the same time, I was sad because a big part of me was not in my home anymore. I had friends comment that the energy in my house seemed calmer and that I seemed calmer as well. And it was then that I realized that the challenges Matt faced, I also faced as a mom and a caregiver. So fast forward a few more decades, and my caregiving role has changed even more. But the biggest lesson I've learned is that caregiving didn't stop just because Matt doesn't live in my house anymore. So the no retirement plan. When he lived with me, it was a full-time effort. He had so many challenges that we really had to devote a lot of time to Matt. And then becoming an indirect caregiver, it was a hard shift for me, but I've realized that it's critical for me to be involved indirectly in order for him to be successful. It was my involvement in his life that informed his new staff about how to best support him. The knowledge of his history taught them how to help him when he got upset. And by continuing to participate in his medical appointments, that provided the continuity, the health history that would have been lost otherwise. And that's very important to his ongoing care. So moving from full-time caregiver and parent to one who cares indirectly took a lot of patience. It took patience with myself and with those who were learning about Matt. There were times that I would get frustrated because people didn't do things the way that I thought they should to keep Matt calm and to keep him happy and stuff. And I'm learning that just because they don't do it my way doesn't mean it's not right and that Matt doesn't appreciate it. So I've learned that indirect caregiving is still a very important role. And I know that there are a lot of families who choose to have their loved one stay in the home with them for the loved one's entire life. But that was not Matt's choice. And him moving out was his choice. So we have a program in Florida. It's called Supported Living, and it allows Matt to live away from us in his own home. He's got a lease for a house that he rents. He pays the rent, and a Medicaid waiver fund pay for the staff that um, support him in his day-to-day activities. So when he was still in public school and his brother had left and gone to the Coast Guard, I would ask Matt, do you want to stay here at home with mom and dad, or do you want to move out like your brother did? And he'd quick give me a thumbs up. He does not speak, so we have to use gestures and some signs. But it was difficult for me to let go because he doesn't speak. I was afraid people wouldn't know what Matt really wants and needs, because you have to be around Matt to understand what particular grunts mean and sounds mean and stuff. And I was very worried about that. So those first few years, we had a lot of overnight visits with mom and dad. So I've learned that I've got to be patient with the staff as they learn to support him, because he has wants and needs and interests, likes and dislikes, just like every other person does. He just can't communicate it in the same way. It's important for his staff to know his history, and I've got the distant history, but Matt's fortunate in that he's got some staff that have been with him for one of them for, gosh, since 1997. That's a very long time in this field. So they can provide new staff with more recent history, where I can give his childhood likes and dislikes and what he did as a kid. So I think that's important in having that continuity of somebody who knows him, because it helps people understand how to best support him. And most recently, Matt's had some health issues in the last year. He's had some signs that we probably are on this Alzheimer's path. He was diagnosed with it over 10 years ago, but I think it was an incorrect diagnosis, because he really didn't show signs of the condition worsening. But he's had things in the last year that are kind of leading us to believe that he is on that path now. So I stay very involved in his health care, and just day to day, I'm in touch with one of the staff who's with him 4 days a week. We talk a lot, and he lets me know, I've seen this change. Matt doesn't seem to be signing as much, and, just some of the red flags that we kind of watch for when our loved ones are starting the Alzheimer's journey. So as I have, as Matt has grown, and my role as his caregiver has changed in the past year, it's still important for his health and safety. And I know that, it's a very important role, and it's a role from which I'm never going to retire. And something happened today that I thought of this slide. It's like, yeah, you just can't quit. I'm not going to tell you about it right now, but I do want to talk about it before we end this evening. So let go. This is Matt at house he lived in before the one he's in now, but going home from having gone grocery shopping. Having a son with multiple challenges made it kind of hard for me to even believe that I would ever be able to let go. He's had communication challenges most of his life. So it was hard for me to let people make any decisions, much less important decisions, because obviously they didn't know him as well as I did. That was a fallacy on my part, by the way. That was being facetious. So the life expectancy of a person with Down syndrome has just increased tremendously since he was born. And he has already outlived his father, and there's still a chance that he could outlive me. So it's an important part of our journey as he's aging, is for me to recognize that I have to let go. I have to let the staff who are involved with him and care about him and know him take the lead on some things. So, and I've done that. I've asked his older brother to start being more involved in some of the planning meetings, and I've got two of his staff that are taking more responsibility for making some of the decisions that I don't really have to be involved in. Sometimes I reinsert myself and then I back off going, wait, this is one of the things you let go of and stuff. So knowing that he's got people who are really in his corner has given me a lot of peace for um, uh, just being able to know that Matt's going to be okay. If something happens to me tonight, he's going to be okay. One of the biggest things that I did in letting go was was giving up guardianship. Joe and I became Joe was his father, became guardians of Matt when he was about 23. And about 10 years ago, a woman who has been in Matt's life since 1997, she started off as a support coordinator and then became a natural support. She's like a family member with us. About 10 years ago, she took me to breakfast and said, when you can't do this anymore, I would like to be Matt's guardian. And so just before Joe died, we started the process to change from him and I being guardian. We're guardian advocates. It's a special guardianship for folks with developmental disabilities in Florida. But and Michelle became the guardian just a few months after Joe passed. And the thing that I love about this is we make decisions as if we are co-guardians. I have no legal responsibility. She has to deal with all the court stuff and the papers and stuff, but she runs stuff by me that, like if he moves, I'm part of that decision, as is he. And it's good because she sees how I make decisions with and format. And then I can get more comfortable that she's making decisions exactly like I would have done. So it's been a little bit easier to let go as I have seen this support network surround Matt. And that's the third theme in my caregiving journey, and that's build a heart network. This is like so important. Heart network is just the people who are around us that support us, that help us get through the day. The people who we are closest to, maybe a spouse or a sibling or a best friend, they're the ones we turn to when we just need to vent. If we need to say something that's not real flattering about our role as a parent to this child who has a disability, this is the person we would go to and just let it out. We have other people in our heart network who, we may talk with regularly, but not every day, like our doctors, maybe the teachers, therapists. And then there are the people that don't even realize that they've done something nice for you. Maybe the clerk in the grocery store just makes you feel good. There's a fellow who's a bagger at the Publix that I go to. He's been there for, I think, about 20 years. And I love this guy. He makes me smile every time I see him. He's part of my heart network and he doesn't even know it. I found it challenging, and this is something that I want families to know, that it's important that we build this, but it's not always easy. It was very challenging for me because we moved to Florida after being out of state and out of country for a number of years, and Matt was in some of the most challenging times of his life. So we couldn't go out and do social activities with community groups like a Down syndrome group or our parent-to-parent group. We couldn't even do things with friends and family because he was so challenging. And I wasn't good at asking for help. I was just insecure enough that I felt like if I had to ask for help, that I wasn't managing Matt's care very well and that I was failing as his mom. I've learned differently, but during the time that I could have been building that heart network, I just wasn't very successful. So it's not the easiest thing unless you live in the same place from the time your kiddo is a newborn and people, know them their entire lives. So, but I learned when Joe died, I had to ask for help, and I gave myself permission to let people do things for Matt that maybe were challenging. I've hit a point now where to have Matt around me for more than a few hours is more than I can handle. I can do it if there's staff with him who's supporting me to support him, but if it's just him and me, he challenges me like a 3-year-old. I mean, he knows which buttons to push, and I don't have the stamina, the energy, the coping skills that I did when he was younger. So I've learned to say I need help, um, so I know that with this, even though it's a small heart network, I know with this heart network that Matt's safe, and if he outlives me, he's going to be fine. And then I'm getting to the share the hard stuff. This is something, as I said earlier, is why I had difficulty doing the building that heart network, because I didn't share the hard stuff. I made everybody believe that I was so in control, and I just could do anything. Matt is such an amazing fellow. He's got lots of challenges, lots of labels. Autism, apraxia, Down syndrome, and then more. So he's had lots of challenges, and he is so amazing. He just, I mean, without words, he can wrap you right around his little finger. He's just so sweet and loving and caring and stuff. I never shared the challenging parts. I remember having a phone conversation with my father. Matt would have probably been 12 or 13 years old, and it was the first time he knew that, and my dad lived in Iowa. I was in Florida and Germany during that time, but it was the first time my dad had any idea that this wasn't just like raising my first son was, that there were challenges and stuff. There were a lot of instances where Matt and I were invisible to other, even in the Down syndrome community, and we were even like shunned by the Down syndrome community. But when I connected with NDSS in 2017, with the idea for what's now become the Adult Summits, I was compelled to say, you all need to know what this is really like, and that's when I finally got comfortable saying, I love Matt dearly, but he's not an easy fella to raise. He's not always easy to be around. He's loving, he's wonderful, he's an amazing fellow, but he's challenging too, and we need to recognize that. And I like to talk about, just like autism has a spectrum, I believe Down syndrome has a spectrum too, because there are folks with dual diagnosis, and there are folks who are lobbyists in Congress. That's a wide range of abilities and challenges. So, and over the years, I've spoken with parents who have kids who are out there and, are spokespeople, and they still face challenges. And then there are the families who are like mine, who have walked away from their Down syndrome community because they don't feel seen and heard. So I have learned, very late, but I have learned that unless we share these difficult things, folks like Margot and Lake, representing NDSS, can't do anything about it. It wasn't until I shared with Candy Pickard what the challenges were that we started addressing that as an organization. So I just think it's very, very important that we share the hard stuff as well as the good stuff. So yeah, and NDSS, Margot mentioned, has the aging and caregiving space now, and the Adult Summit, and have developed some amazing print resources and video resources that are supporting our families as they age. And it's something that I am so grateful for and love sharing with families that I come across, so. And there is why I can't retire. You know, it's that vote of confidence. He and I had been to lunch when this photo was snapped, and he was with a staff member, and I had signed "I love you" to Matt, and this is the sign for mom, and "I love you," and he signed "I love you" and combined it with mom, and it's like one of my favorite pictures and stuff. So, but I can't quit. You know, I'm 77 years old, and I can't stop because he still needs me to be his voice. And I'm gonna put a real quick plug in. NDSS yesterday or the day before sent out some resources on advocating on the stuff going on with Medicaid, and I got I think 504 is our resources on 504 now too from NDSS. I got some more stuff from Matt's support coordinator. Today I got this, I sent a text to Matt's circle and said, what are we going to do if Medicaid funding goes away? Because that's what pays for Matt's services and part of his health care. And nobody responded. And then the support coordinator finally responded and said, I hadn't heard anything about it. And I'm like, wanting to pull my hair out. These people are like, their jobs are dependent on Medicaid funds coming into the state of Florida. Today, she sent an email with an urgent request to call representatives because the budget is going somewhere next week. I guess it's going to the Senate next week for voting, but it's going to gut Medicaid. And I saw it as I'm driving home from my time at the circus in Sarasota, having a ball, and then I get this email and I'm stopped in traffic. I'm not looking at it while I'm driving, but you know, I just wanted to cry. It's like, I cannot retire. I'm going to be 102 and still out there advocating because it's so important. And yeah. And I'm just so grateful because I'm going to turn it back over to Margot now, but I'm so grateful for what NDSS does to support our families who have felt alone as their loved ones are aging. So yeah, thank you, Margot. Thank you, Lake. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Candy is our president and CEO. Thank you, Jadine. And as she did mention, our policy and advocacy team does put together toolkits on various policy things happening right now. If you're interested, they're available on our website and also on social media. Just to update you on what the topics are, and then why they might be of concern to you, and if they are, what you would want to do about it. Sandy, we saw your note. Thank you so much. We're going to dive. We'll have time for, I think, a really great discussion at the conclusion. I want to make sure we get through some of the slides, but we're grateful that you are here with us today. And thank you, Jadine. Like I said, you are the elder amongst us, a wealth of knowledge. And one of the things that I really love about Jadine is that she gives everyone permission to take the path that's best for them, not necessarily the path that other people tell you should take, or the one that we feel pressure to take. Some of the decisions that have to be made are difficult, 100% for sure. And sometimes the best decision can make us feel guilty, but it can still be the best decision. So thank you, Jadine. And I want to shift our focus just a little bit to talk about some of the resources that NDSS creates. So on the next slide, when I mentioned resources, one of the things that we create are guidebooks. And if you're not familiar, we have a guidebook that we've had for a little while about aging and Down syndrome that just talks about what the aging process looks like for somebody with Down syndrome. In 2023, we updated it because at that point it was about 10 years, and we've learned a lot in the past 10 years about what that means to age with Down syndrome. And when we updated it, we created what I call a companion guidebook about caregiving. So the one with aging and Down syndrome is all about your loved one with Down syndrome and what's happening with them. But the caregiving one is we didn't want to lose sight that this is also a journey for caregivers. So what is the journey for caregivers as their loved one with Down syndrome ages? And I would say anybody who listens to this or wants to read it, it applies if your child has an intellectual disability or a disability that's not Down syndrome. I think that there's a lot in there that will resonate and be similar to the journey that you're on. So I would recommend taking a look at it. The other is that Lake recently created a toolkit that goes along with the caregiving guide. So in the caregiving guide, we make a lot of recommendations about creating documents. And so the caregiving toolkit is a series of worksheets to help you think through the document. Sometimes we sit down and we're like, oh yes, I need to write this down on paper, but we don't know where to start. And so the toolkit is a way to start prompting you to start thinking about what needs to be written down, what should be passed along to future caregivers or shared amongst the caregivers that are part of your support plan. These are not legal documents, but these are documents to support you in your journey. So the first part about the caregiving guide is we have this graphic that really represents all the things that we need to consider as a caregiver for somebody with Down syndrome or for somebody with an intellectual disability. So all the blue parts are sort of the inputs. The yellow box is the person that we love. And then what we want to do is take all of the inputs, all of the things that need to be done, and divide them among a support team. So it's a lot, right? I mean, it's super easy to say that in a couple sentences or draw a picture of it. But when we sit down and think of all of the things that fall in these boxes, it can be quite overwhelming. And just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of things to sort through. And as Jadine says, she's still sorting through them. But for the purposes of this presentation, we really wanted to focus on a couple different plans. So emergency planning, a support plan, and then a self-care plan for the caregiver. So first is the emergency plan. This document may look familiar to other documents that you've seen that are the same for emergency planning. And the purpose behind this, again, is because as caregivers, we have a lot that we keep in our minds, which is great, really helps us, but doesn't necessarily help other people that could be involved during an emergency. So Jadine had an experience this summer in which a hurricane, I don't know if you guys heard about in Missouri, there was a giant hurricane that came to Florida, really, really hurt the state of Florida. And Jadine was able to work with Matt, and Matt supports on finding him a safe place to be. And that was great because they had a little bit of warning because we knew the hurricane was coming, but not all emergencies work that way. Sometimes they happen and you have to make a decision immediately. Having information written down will help make that decision. It allows our brain the free space to not have to remember the things we're supposed to be remembering. It allows our brain to focus on the decisions that we need to make, and also allows other people that are involved in the process to have the information they need. So we really, really recommend that people write this information down. And if there's other information you want to write down that's not included on this worksheet, that's great, because we have extra pages, blank pages for you that you can just keep going. The other thing is, as Jadine mentioned, she calls it her heart network. But we really, really want to encourage people to think about a support system and write it down. And part of the reason that we created a worksheet for this, for people to write it down, is because sitting down and writing down who should be in your support network will make you start thinking of it and concretely saying, okay, this person is in my network and this is the role that I want them to play. The other thing that we want you to really do with this sheet is when somebody's name is on the sheet, to let them know that their name is on the sheet. Because I think that's equally as important. As a quick sort of example, it's not the best story in the world, but a couple years ago, I was in downtown DC and I encountered a woman who was clearly having some health difficulties. She was driving in downtown DC. One of the tires had completely come off of her wheel. She was going the wrong way on a major one-way street. She knew her name, but she didn't know where she was or how she got there. And she was from like 2 hours away. And so my friends and I flagged her down, got in her car, pulled her car over, sort of talking to her. She was obviously very scared, very upset. And she told us we could go through her purse. And so we went through her purse and we found a list of names and numbers and like titles for who everyone was. And we thought, oh my God, this is amazing. This is what we need. This is how we're going to get her help. And we started calling on the numbers and nobody picked up. And then we started texting people and saying, you're probably not picking up because you don't know our number, but we need your help. We are with, your friend, and gave her name. Still nobody picked up. Finally, after an hour, I got somebody to pick up, and I got her on the phone and I said, this is where I am and this is who I'm with. And she accused me of lying. It was not easy. And what I took away from that situation is now I answer the phone, no matter if I know the phone number or not. A list of people who are emergency contacts does not work if they do not know that they're on the list and they do not recognize that they need to pick up the phone, no matter if it's an unknown number or not, because we all don't like to pick up unknown numbers. But if you're on somebody's list, that's sort of the agreement that you have to make, right? You can call me if you need help. You can put my name in, in a safe spot. And so that's not meant because I want people to be worried about what's going to be happening with their loved ones and where they're going to be wandering about, just to really emphasize a list of people and names is basically as powerful as the people that know that they're on it. The second reason we really want for people to write down your support system is because God forbid something happens and you can't be present, or you have to step away for a short period of time. Whoever steps in to take over the primary caregiver role will really also appreciate knowing who else they can turn to for help and who else that they can lean upon to, care for your loved one. I'll move on. But so the next one is we really want people to create a support plan or a life plan. And this is described as a blueprint of how you want your loved one with Down syndrome or with a disability to be cared for. There's a lot of different ways that you can think about that would go into basically what you would want somebody to know. As a quick example, I have a 7-year-old daughter with Down syndrome, so we're still at the very beginning of our journey. But one of the really particular things about her is she eats guacamole every day. Every day. It's a thing. She loves it. But honestly, if she doesn't have guacamole after 3 or 4 days, she's not happy. And that is very specific and very unique to her, but is really dependent on her quality of life. And if somebody comes in and somebody cares for her, they need to know that this is part of your grocery shopping list. This needs to be part of her diet. And so for me, this is something that I would write in her support plan because it's important to me and it's important to her. So it can be really mundane things like that, all the way up to, what days she has therapy, when she plays with her friends, when she needs to go to school, when she needs to go to the doctor. So, big things, but then also small things that you think are really important for somebody to know. The thing I also want to emphasize about this document is it is dynamic. It can change. We have it for free on our website. You can download it as many times as you want. You can update it as many times as you want. The important thing about filling out this document is getting your thoughts on paper for today, not for next year, not for 5 years from now, not for 10 years from now. It's really just saying, okay, I'm going to sit down right now and write down the important things, and I'm just going to get a baseline. And then maybe once a year, or twice a year, when you replace the batteries in your smoke detector, you can go and look at your support plan and say, do I need to update anything in this? Again, just making sure that you've put in writing on paper what somebody else would need to know. Because as Jadine said, at some point, other people are going to come into your life and other people are going to help. And you may be leaning on them to say, okay, you may know more of these nuances a little bit more than I do right now. Would you mind writing this down? So if you quit because you're a staff and the next staff comes in, they will know what you know. The next thing is just in terms of medical care. We, as other people have come into our lives, I'm sure, we've all been asked the question of how many surgeries have you had? What medications do you take? What doctors do you go to? Again, this is just trying to write down this information so it's in one place and easily accessible for anybody who could need to access it. I know that was really quick. I'm trying. Sometimes worksheets aren't the most interesting thing to talk about, but it is important to do it. And we just want to emphasize these were created with a purpose and for a reason and for intention, and to ultimately make everyone's life easier, because now it's all written down and it doesn't live in our head in a set of assumptions that one day we're going to do. Let's do it tomorrow, maybe, because it's getting late today. But the last thing is self-care for the caregiver. So my assumption, I know there's only 6 of us on this call, but even among the 6 of us, right? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that we could do to improve our self-care. We all, in some form or another, help to care for another person, and we are much better caregivers if we're caring for ourselves and if we're coming from a place in which we feel like we can give to another person. Self-care can be anything. It can be a hobby, it can be exercise, it can be going to the spa, it can be having lunch with a friend. It really is a unique personal thing to you. What does self-care mean? But do what any activity that you want to do that gives you peace and helps you feel relaxed and helps you feel rejuvenated so that you can keep going. As Jadine says, there is no retirement plan. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And in order to get through it, sometimes we just have to pause, take a break, and then keep going. What we have listed up here are the 5 pillars of health, and all of these 5 pillars of health are connected to each other, but they all also have the thing in common that if you make a teeny tiny change in one of them, you will actually start feeling it pretty quickly. So most of us walk around dehydrated on a daily basis. And if we even drank just one more glass of water or one more bottle of water every day, we would feel better. We would have more energy. We'd be a little more alert, which is similar to having more energy, right? But like we would just feel a little better. Same thing for sleep. I'm sure we could all use 30 to 60 more minutes of sleep at night. If we did that on a regular basis, we would all feel a lot better and probably be more patient with the people in our lives that we need to be patient with. So if you're not sure where to start with self-care, our recommendation is pick one of these and just do something small. So we made a worksheet, which I'm sure surprises you, to help you start thinking through what can you do. So the self-care plan, what we want you to do is, and again, writing this down makes you think about it and makes you have a plan. And we're more likely to do something if we have a plan. So start with, out of the 5 things, what do you want to do? What do you want to focus on? We are more likely to make a little change in our lives if it's just one small thing, as opposed to saying, I'm going to revamp all 5 of these areas of my life. No one, like, we're not going to do that. We don't have time for that. But what we have time for, hopefully, is one small thing. And so the next thing is, what are you going to do? Right? Like, what are you going to commit to doing? We're more likely, if our thing was nutrition, let's say our thing was nutrition. If it was nutrition and we just said, we're going to eat healthier, that again is pretty like out there. But if our one thing is we're going to have one piece of fruit every day for breakfast, we're more likely to do that. So like maybe that could be your thing, and that could just help you get more fruit in your day. And then the next part is, what do you need to do this? We all need help, right? Especially if you're caregiving, or, we may need professional help. We may need like a nutritionist to come and tell us, what are we missing? We may need a personal trainer to say, hey, how can I exercise a little bit more? We may need somebody to watch our kids or watch our loved ones and have respite care so that we can go achieve these things. So I made an example. And I'll tell you, I made this example in November because we did a similar presentation in November, and I'm still not 100% there. It's a work in progress. So I think, also being graceful with myself and giving myself grace and just being proud that I've made small changes and I'm still on this journey, for me, is great, right? I'm going to celebrate that for myself and say that I am winning. But my thing was, I want to move. I like to move my body. I like to get out. I like to do something. So my small goal that I was going to work on is 30 minutes of physical activity a day. And 30 minutes, because that's what the government says I should be doing, right? If I do 30 minutes a day, then I get to the total number of what I'm supposed to be doing a week. And I picked physical activity because physical activity is easier to achieve than exercise. So I knew who I know who I am, and I know that physical activity is more within my wheelhouse right now than full on exercising. And then what do I need to do it? I know I need a schedule. I know I need my phone to alert me and say, in 30 minutes, you're going to go do this, because if I don't have an alert and a prompt, then I'm just going to forget about it. I also know that I really like positive enforcement. I really like for my husband to say, did you work out today? I'm so proud of you. Or did you go on a walk today? Did you do physical activity today? I'm proud of you for doing this. I know that that helps me stick with it. So I need to go tell him, hey, I need you to do this for me, and have him commit to being a part of this plan. I also need him to watch. We have 3 kids. He's got to watch the kids so I can go do this. And I also need to be committed, which I'm working on, because motivation is not enough. It's commitment that is really going to help us make these changes. So this is just an example. And I put an example up just to say, like, We all struggle with this, right? Everybody is a work in progress. We're all working on it. But if we pick something small and we write a plan out for it and we identify what we need, we're more likely to actually get this done than just sort of pie in the sky, just saying like, oh, I'm going to work out more. So we encourage everybody who's with us today and then everybody who watches this to really take this seriously and say, okay, what small change am I going to make for myself? Because it will make me a better caregiver, and my loved one with Down syndrome or with another disability is going to benefit from this, whether I am a direct caregiver or an indirect caregiver, as Jadine likes to call herself. But with that, I'm going to turn this over to Lake to walk us through a few things that we can actually do right now.
Thanks, Margot. Yes, I am Lake. And I'm gonna walk us through two stress management techniques. And these are just two examples for self-care, specifically related to emotional wellness. Emotional wellness really helps us build this idea of resiliency. I love this example Margot uses that, if we work on our physical fitness and we twist our ankle, we're much more likely to recover quickly. And the same thing can be said about emotional wellness. If we build up these tools in our toolkit for emotional wellness, when something happens, because it will, it's life, we have the tools to be able to handle that with resiliency. And with emotional wellness, practicing just one strategy a day can have significant benefits on your health. So I'm going to walk us through two. The first one is a breathing technique, and this is designed to be done with a stress ball, but you can do anything. You can even just clench your fists. I forgot to take a stress ball home from the office, so I grabbed a rolled up pair of socks. And so what you're supposed to do is while you're inhaling for a count of three, you're squeezing your stress ball, your socks, or just your fist. We're gonna hold it for a count of three, and then we're gonna exhale and release the tension for a count of three. So I'm gonna set a timer for 1 minute and count us through this. So we're gonna inhale and squeeze for 1, 2, 3, hold. 1, 2, 3, release. 1, 2, 3. We're gonna inhale for 1, 2, 3, hold. 1, 2, 3, and we're gonna exhale. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's do a couple more. Inhale and squeeze. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 1, 2, 3. Okay, last one. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 1, 2, 3. So that was 3 seconds shy of a minute. And practicing that just once every day can contribute to your self-care goal. So the next activity is thinking positive thoughts. Practicing thinking positive thoughts on a regular basis can again contribute to building up that resiliency. So when we are having those more negative thoughts, we have this tool on our tool belt to be able to think those positive thoughts. And positive affirmations, they can help with stress, managing stress by reinforcing the resiliency mindset, boosting self-confidence, and encouraging a more optimistic perspective in challenging situations. So I recommend on just a sticky note or a little piece of tape or on a piece of paper, writing 3 things you like about yourself. They can honestly be anything, and put it somewhere that you would see every day. So like your bathroom mirror. So when you wake up, you can look at these 3 things, recite them to yourself, and that's just a really good way to start the day with the positive affirmations. Quickly, I wanted to highlight that NDSS, Margot did a great job of doing a deeper dive into our caregiving guide and caregiving toolkit we have, but we have a lot more resources that are all free to download on the NDSS website. I just wanted to highlight some of these. The Women's Health and Down Syndrome Guide is our newest health guide, and it's a comprehensive resource. It's designed for primary care providers, but caregivers and family members can still gain a lot from the information. And it talks about the nuanced healthcare needs of women with Down syndrome, and it provides strategies to care for this population. Margot already discussed a little bit about the Aging and Down Syndrome Guide, and then we also have an Alzheimer's disease and Down Syndrome Guide. And it focuses on specifically what to expect as your loved one ages and if they have the Alzheimer's disease diagnosis. And it covers diagnosis, treatment options, communication, and behavior strategies, as well as future planning. These are just a few of the health resources. We have more resources. JD and Margot briefly mentioned the policy ones. We also have resources on employment and education, and you can scan that QR code to view all of them on the website. Also, NDSS hosts monthly free webinars on various topics. Our next webinar will be on March 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be with Shantanese Reese, and she will talk about emotional intelligence and emotional wellness. So if you enjoyed the small self-care portion I walked through today, go ahead and register for this free webinar. It'll be 50 minutes of even more insights from Shantanese. And you can register for free using that link. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight some more resources from other groups that are also doing great things. The early detection screen for dementia was developed by NTG. This tool is used in starting that critical conversation with healthcare providers as to whether their observations of caregivers with behavior change merit assessment for dementia. And it can really help facilitate that process of, you're a caregiver and you're noticing behavior change and being able to communicate those changes effectively with a provider. Also, Advocate Medical Group, Adult Down Syndrome Center. The Adult Down Syndrome Center is a healthcare clinic in Park Ridge, Illinois, and they also have a very robust resource center online. You can pretty much find something on any topic just by searching their website, so I would highly recommend checking that out. And then also the Down Syndrome Medical Interest Group. DISMIG is a group of health professionals committed to promoting optimal healthcare and wellness for individuals with Down syndrome. I would highlight two of their resources. They have one on regression and one on behavior that are really good. And then lastly, their International Association of Chiefs of Police have a resource called Promising Practices to Address Wandering of Individuals with developmental disabilities or dementia, and this resource provides a comprehensive overview of wandering by individuals with IDD or dementia and explores promising practices for implementing strategies related to communication, technology, and education. Thank you, and those are all our emails if you have any more questions. If anybody has questions now, we can also go over that. I know it's a small group.
It is a very small group. I want to say thanks, first of all, for doing this. JD, your story was extremely touching and moving. My mother has dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's and I can relate a little bit, but I cannot relate to what you all are going through. So I just wanted to say that, and the resources that you guys are putting out, I'm going to share with all of our caregivers, and send them an email with this information in it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. As Lake said, that they're all free, and I mean we create them for people to use them, and so the more people that get them,
Yeah.
that's the
Okay.
purpose. And like I said, I think a lot of them, especially the caregiving ones, will be helpful even if your child doesn't have Down syndrome, if they have, another type of developmental disability.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, and even you know for my own family.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Sandy made a comment earlier
Yeah.
in the chat. She said, it's hard, it's so hard knowing which things to stay, quote, in charge of. She struggles with that a lot.
And I'm just gonna respond and say, I totally get that. Because I still struggle, even as I have given myself permission to let go of certain things. I I sometimes find that I'm trying to take things back, and I have to consciously say, this is something that you don't need to do. You don't need to
Mhm.
handle this particular thing. Matt
Mhm.
needed or had an issue with his washer, and it's just a little over a year old. And I was right ready to get in there and help solve the problem. And then it was like, no, he's got a supported living coach and he's got a guardian who will handle his finances. I don't need to do anything about it. I'm just going to go in there and chat with Matt,
Mhm.
so, um, as far as like knowing like what level of things to let go of, I don't let
Mhm.
go of healthcare. And I
Mhm.
don't do that because um, with Matt getting that very premature or incorrect diagnosis over 10 years ago of Alzheimer's, I have learned a lot. I made it a mission to learn everything I can about Down syndrome and Alzheimer's. And I am far from an expert, but given Matt's circle of support, I know more than any of them in the circle. So I do not back off from his health care. I do not necessarily go to his doctor appointments. He has staff who can take him. If there are issues, for example, neurology. If Matt had 2 grand mal seizures last summer, they were the first grand mals. He's had partial complex seizures since he was 16, very well controlled. Last summer, he had 2 grand mals. I made sure that we did telehealth. We didn't actually go into the office and stuff, but I made sure that I was at that appointment. So those are things that I'm not giving up yet, and I don't think I should because I have his health history. I may think of something that happened to him when he was 20 that other folks wouldn't even know about. So, where he goes during the day and what he does for fun, I don't get involved in that anymore. I
Mhm.
have folks that I trust to do the right things with him. So I don't know if that helps Sandy or not.
Yeah,
Are you a parent,
I
sibling?
am. No,
Uh-huh.
I'm a parent. This, I'll just tell you. So I somehow I came across this webinar. I do not know how exactly because I'm in Oregon. I have no idea where you guys are, but I don't think you're near Oregon. Um, and I have an adult with developmental disabilities, and it is
Uh-huh.
so hard. Everything is that I see for support or ideas. It's a lot based on the youth, which is great, but
Yes.
it's like I feel like I'm in my own world, and my son, it's almost like a hidden disability because he appears somewhat normal or neurotypical, but yeah, he has 17 hours of caregiver support every day.
Mhm.
um and I just feel like if I were not on this earth tomorrow, what would happen? And so yeah, I'm constantly trying to let go of things because nobody knows him like I do.
Right.
So I really resonated with a lot of what's been said here, even though my son doesn't have Down syndrome. So I'm so grateful um to have joined and been able to hear everything. So
Cindy, we're so happy you're here.
yeah.
Um, and it's interesting with, because people with Down syndrome, it's a developmental disability. And so there's
Yeah.
a lot that's really similar.
Yeah.
Um, we have, and I've heard other people who don't have Down syndrome, but, have children have a different diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we wish we were more like Down syndrome, right? Like, we wish that we had the community that
Yeah.
with Down syndrome have, because there's, I would say a lot of us, but maybe more than
Yeah, it's
some
more
group.
defined. It seems
Yeah.
like it's more
Right.
defined. Not that
Right.
it's better or it's
Yeah.
just more
Yeah.
defined. And there's all of these, genetic mutations that are resulting in various developmental delays. And that's what my son has, is he has
Yeah.
a genetic mutation that, when it was first identified at age 21. And so we lived, his whole, up till age 21, just a generic developmental disability diagnosis. And then finally I had a meltdown and I'm like, what if I'm not here tomorrow? And my doctor said, let's go to genetics. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, there's nothing that they can find. And so we did. They found this mutation. There were only 40 known cases, but they don't test for it. That's why. And now 3 years later, there's, a little over 300, but there's such a wide range of developmental disabilities that it's hard to find. There's a lot with really extreme disabilities. And my son, again, he just blends in. And so it's harder to find help in that. or like the community support, or even my own family doesn't quite get it. Yeah. So, yeah.
How old is your son, if you don't mind?
24. Yeah. Yeah.
I would say saying that a lot of the resources that we have about employment or independence or community living would all apply to your family as well. That it's again, it's all very similar. JD mentioned at one point earlier when she was talking, we do something called an adult summit, and we're not doing it in 2025 for a variety of reasons, but we're going to do it, unfortunately, in Boston. And well, unfortunately, because it's not close to you, but Boston in March of 2026. And I would say it's sort of the same thing. Like, we welcome people to disabilities to come. So, if you want to bring your son, if you want to you have to bring your son. But again, like, talking a lot about these topics and having people come, the medical stuff may not resonate, but I think everything else, absolutely, like the caregiving stuff and the employment, all of the other parts, I think you might find really helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I felt weird at first even registering for this, because I'm like, well, I don't want it to seem like an imposter that I'm like, but it's just been hard to find, like, just general information on the adult side of things. So, and oddly enough, the physician who identified this mutation that my son has, she was at Columbia in New York, and now she's at Boston's Children's. So, and he's gone to meet her a couple times. She was in a medical trial. So yeah. But it's been great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to looking at the website. Because a couple of the slides I think Lake showed that had maybe some links. Is there a way to get those? He was recommending, I think there were 4 different links that he was mentioning for.
It was
we can.
Yeah,
I can with the EDSD and stuff, then Brian's clinic and.
Yeah.
I can let me make a PDF of the slides right now, and I'll just put them in the chat, and then the link should still work.
Okay.
When I
perfect.
save it
Yeah,
as
that
a
would be
PDF,
great.
so I'm gonna just do that really fast.
Thank you. Yeah, because I'm always on the hunt. I'm constantly, I have a full-time job, and so caring for my son is a second full-time job, and I love him and I wouldn't have it any other way. But and then we have caregiver support as well, but I still do all of the, of course, the medical stuff, but I do all of the just refilling, prescriptions, or making appointments to meet with his service coordinator, and just everything logistical I still do, and it takes a lot of time, and even coordinating to make sure his nails get clipped and stuff, because he can't do that. So I'm just constantly searching for ways to make this happen in a way that I don't have to be present all the time.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
it's a lot.
yeah.
And you've been doing it for a long time.
It's
a lot.
Yeah. So thank you.
No, thank you. If you look at the Adult Down Syndrome Center when Lake sends the PDF, they have, and I don't know how your son does with social stories, but they have an occupational therapist that works on staff who makes just so many social stories. Which for people with Down syndrome are visual learners. And So for new experiences, new things, we often recommend that before you do something new, right? Like, let's talk about what you're going to do and let's have a social story, because talking about it doesn't resonate as much as visually looking through, like, okay, here is actually what's going to happen. Because again, people are visual learners. I'm not sure if your son is the same.
Same. No,
But
he is. Yeah.
yeah. So that website, the OTN staff there, her name is Katie. She's fabulous, but she makes lots and lots and lots of
Oh,
social stories, and a lot of them are medically related.
yeah.
So you can just talk about, like, okay, we're going to go have this procedure done, here's
Yeah.
what it's going to be like.
Very cool. Well, thank you. This is, yeah, I'm so interested in taking some time to look through the different resources you guys have shared. So thank you.
Sandy, I'm having technical difficulties. Would you mind sharing your email and I
Oh,
can send it
sure.
to you in an email?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll
To
put it
keep
in the
you
chat.
while I'm
Yeah.
troubleshooting. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yep. No apologies. That's how I feel like my day is all day, every day.
Like, I'm going to add mine to the chat too, if you don't mind sending it to
Oh,
me
yeah.
as well. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for Stephanie and Jason, right, at any point in time, right, again, we have a 1-800 number. We have, you can email health@mdss.org, and it goes to me and Lake and our colleague Dana. Happy to answer any questions. Try to, if you're looking for something and we know that it exists, send it your way, or we know somebody who might be able to help.
Yeah, we have a lot of participants that with adults that has Down syndrome or autism, and I'm surprised that there wasn't more caregivers from our centers that joined. But I'm definitely going to share this information and the call or this session with them. Send them an email with this link and let them take a look at it, and then forward that PDF as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And our adult summit moves around the US. So hopefully when we're back in your guys' part of the country, we'll reach out.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Thank you so much.
Or come
Thank
visit
you.
us in Boston.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
We do have groups come sometimes that will travel, because again, we welcome adults with Down syndrome, adults with other disabilities to come and join us. And there's some presentations that on our modified track that they can attend, or they can attend the general track if they want to go to the general track. But they're quite fun, and a dance party, because you can't get a group of people with Down syndrome together for a dance party. So
Right.
always a dance party.
That's great.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time and educating us and going through this. JD, nice to meet you. Lake, nice to meet you. Margot, nice to meet you. Stephanie and Sandy, glad that you were able to make it. And I want to give a shout out to Aging Ahead, to one of our partners, referring partners. So thank you very much, Stephanie, for all that you do as well.
Sure, you too. Thank you.
All right. You all have a
Thanks,
great
guys.
night.
Thank you.
Ew.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
that
Bye.
fire.
I'm
Yeah.
Loving it.
yeah, it's getting a little hot on the back of my head.
I bet.
You all have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.